Welcome, fiends, to Stories After Dark at the Benson Branch. My name is David. I will be your MC tonight. We're excited to have you. First, let's welcome John Jurgensen to the stage.
How's everybody doing tonight? Okay, spooky stories. I think everybody's got a few. I have a few as well. I've worked in different haunted buildings. I've had really scary things happen to me, not only paranormal things, but truly terrifying things happen. But the best example of something truly spooky, I think, happened to me when I was a child. I was attending Holy Cross, which is over here, well, actually south, but over here in East Omaha. And my parents decided they wanted to move to an acreage in Wyoming with no experience and really no reason why. And they decided to take me out of school. I got like 2 weeks worth of homework. My father is native, and our land is in Standing Rock, so we get out to some pretty choppy territory every now and then, but this trip, we went up through the Badlands, was horrendous. It was early winter. We got caught in a snowstorm, and we decided to take a rear-wheel drive Lexus through the Badlands. It was, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Baby Boom with Diane Keaton, but it was massively like that. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong. We got out to the property, and it was, it was just raw land. I don't really know what they expected. It didn't work out. And my native grandma told them from the jump, what are you thinking? And anyway, so I don't remember for sure, and I wanted to text my folks before we got here. But they'd want to be overly involved in what was going down tonight, and I didn't want them to fact check me either, so I decided not to text them. But it was either in Casper or Laramie is where we ended up staying, and it was this old Western downtown hotel, and by the time we reached it, it was we were exhausted. My dad was cursing everything under the sun while driving through the snow. The whole idea was just, it was a bad idea from the jump, but it was a overall great experience. So we get to this hotel, we get to the front desk, and it is dimly lit, sepia tone lighting, seriously, Western as fuck. And from the saloon doors, a lady comes out. She's just in old school maid attire, and we get a room. I went to New York City recently. I think of Omaha as a sprawling metropolis, but I went to New York City recently, and someone asked me if I rode my horse to school. So, but this was as Western about as it gets. Before we went up to our hotel room, they had to turn on the radiator and let it warm up. I guess it fed off some boiler, which made very, very spooky, creepy sounds, banging, almost howling. It's a 10-story hotel, and we're up on the 10th story. So we get up to our room, and as we're unpacking, the door that we have open to the front of the hotel room slowly closes. And it makes the classic creaking sound. The door jam, the door barely touches the door jam. And my dad and I look at each other well, it's an old hotel, it's probably nothing. So my parents sleep in one room, I sleep in the other, and it's Victorian era, frilly lace, lots of billowy curtains, lots of velvet. Had an old musty smell of smoke, but good smoke, quality, vanilla-y rich smoke. And worth every bit of lung cancer. And so, it's lights out. we're exhausted, and it's winter. All the windows are closed, and there's like, granted there may be some drafts, but I get up to use the restroom, and I see the curtains like flapping, like as if the whole window were open. And I think, okay, it's catching a vent or whatever. And I go over to inspect. There's really nothing there. I kind of wake up my dad, and he sees it, and we both again look at each other like, what the fuck? He goes back to his bed. I go back to mine. Later through the night, there's banging, like kind of like the boiler banging, but not quite the same. There's almost like a sinister hinge to it, like an angry banging and slamming. We can't for the life of us figure out where it's coming from, because at this point my dad has run into my room. And so we're laying together in the bed, like my mom is out, she's snoring. And so we're laying together in this bed, terrified, and it's thunder snowing outside. So like with the claps of thunder, there's like a flash of light, and we both see a face clear as day. And there was, between the sounds, the door closing, the curtains billowing, and the face, we didn't sleep a wink. We still talk about it to this day. Once it gets to be sunrise, my mom gets up and we describe what happened. This is why she would obliterate this story, but she was asleep the whole time, so she wouldn't know. And we go down to, so it's like at the lobby of the hotel, there's a restaurant, and my dad and I go up to this waitress who's serving us, and we're like telling her what happened, and she goes, "Oh yeah, that's Hank." And we're like, "Oh, see?" And we were like, okay, so it whatever, validated us emotionally. I didn't have those words at the time, but I do now. And but the kind of real sketchy part was, while she was speaking to us, there was like the GM or the manager came through and was like, "We told you not to tell anyone about that. Stop talking about it." And was like legitimately angry. So there was some type of ghost conspiracy going down in Casper, Wyoming, or Laramie, one of the two. And we made our way back through the Badlands, and with the melting snow, we got stuck in the basically northwest corner of the Panhandle, and but that's another story for another time. Thank you.
So when I was a kid, I used to have really bad night terrors, and so I would have really just freaky dreams. And so this is a dream that I had. It's very weird. And bear with me, I have some visual problems, so I'm gonna do my best. Okay. Scratch. An eye twitch-inducing sound breaks through the silence, like nails on a chalkboard during a test. I quickly turn to see what the origin of that awful noise is, but there's nothing there except a name written in blood on the wall. Michael. What the fuck? The voice in my head instantly shouts. Anyone who's seen a horror movie knows you don't actually scream out loud. That's how you die. I slowly walk towards the blood-stained wall, careful not to make a sound. I reach a hand out to touch the dark red letters and stop just short of contact. The superstitious in me warns this could be a curse. I scan the darkness. Still, there's no one. There's nothing. I have to get out of there as fast as I can. I don't want to risk meeting whoever would return. I back away for a few steps, then turn on my heels to run, when I see 3 young girls frozen across the way. Their backs to me as they stare off into the distance. I pause. They look familiar. I know them. They are Michael's daughters. Michael was my neighbor for several years before I moved to another city. He was a traditional suburban man with a family and a white picket fence, comfortable in his middle-class, sleepy life. At times I envied him, how satisfied he was with the mundane. That could never be me. I got bored of everything too quickly. Jobs, relationships, locations, activities, literally everything. Michael was the complete opposite of me, a super conventional man, the kind you could set your watch by. He always kept a bit of a leash on his girls, so I found it odd that they were here, out on the streets, alone, without their dad. As I got closer to them, I whispered their names. Sarah? Adrian? Kelly? No response, and still no movement. What was going on? I reached the trio and lightly tapped Adrian on the shoulder. "Oh my God," she blurted out as she jumped back. "Shh," I covered her mouth and apologized for startling her. "Are you okay? You guys weren't moving, and I wanted to make sure you weren't hurt." Adrian, finally understanding the situation, whispered, "I'm okay. Where are we?" At the sound of their sister's voice, the other two girls seemed to awaken. Sarah, looking around confused, chimed in. "How did we get here?" I shrugged my shoulders as I scanned for any clues. "You don't remember anything, girls?" Sarah was about to answer when Kelly pointed towards the ominous dark gray sky. There was something floating towards us. It was a balloon. It was brightly colored and looked all wrong. "Is that a clown?" Kelly managed to say out loud. I could see it clearly now. It was, in fact, a clown. The weird clown balloon floated straight towards me. I put my hands out to grab it, in spite of every cell in my body resisting the motion. I was staring at the odd rubber orb when the face suddenly scowled at me. I instantly released the evil clown, but not before it bit me. I recoiled in pain. The blood dripping from the two tiny holes in my arm left marks on my white shirt. Shit! The girls are immediately looking at each other in fear. "Let's go," I shouted and started running and urged them to follow. We made our way out to the lower level of the concrete parking garage. There! I had never been so excited to see my obnoxious yellow car. I drew the keys from my pocket and clicked the button with a sigh of relief. I swung open the door, then realized I was all alone. Sarah, Adrian, Kelly. Nothing. I got in the car and locked the doors and waited. Maybe one of them fell. Maybe they're hiding. Maybe they're dead. Tears started falling from my eyes and my hands started shaking. Get a grip, girl. We'll just drive around and pick them up when we see them. No big deal. It was a big deal. It was a very big deal. They were nowhere to be found. I had lost them. I would have to live with the pain I caused their father. I would have to live knowing I destroyed this family. I headed back home, preparing myself to tell Michael that I had lost his precious girls. He would find them. He would be pissed, but he would find them. He was reliable. He was helpful. He was the hometown hero. At least that's what I told myself. Inside my living room, I paced back and forth, looking at the clock. It had been over an hour since I revealed the tragedy to Michael. Since he lost his cool like I'd never seen him before. Since he ripped me a new one. In that moment, I didn't know if I was more scared of him or what could have possibly taken the girls. I didn't tell him that part. I couldn't. He wouldn't have believed me. He was logical, practical. He didn't believe in the supernatural. I heard a faint clank come from down the hall that stopped me in my tracks. What the hell was that? One foot in front of the other, I willed myself to investigate. I was home now. Safe now. No? The sound had come from the closet under the stairs. I hesitated. That closet always creeped me out. It's fine. It's not like I'm alone. My parents were upstairs and would come running if they heard me in trouble. Okay, there's nothing there. I bet something fell off the shelf. I slowly opened the wooden door. A fiery red figure stood there staring at me, and when it saw the horror on my face, it began laughing with every fiber of its being. I slammed the door shut and dragged the contemporary end table in front of it. I could still hear the bellowing of its laughter. My hands pushed against the door one last time to be sure it was secure. I shut my eyes and shook my head in disbelief. Then I heard tisk, tisk, tisk from behind my right ear. I turned my head in that direction and squinted my eyes. Dad, is that you? Dad, what's wrong? He sat quietly in the worn-in leather armchair, shaking his head. You know what that was, he finally said. When I didn't respond, he continued. Hell. That was someone going to hell. My mouth fell open, yet I had no words to speak. You know what else? He paused and smiled. You're next. My eyes flew open, and I never wanted to sleep again.
This story is inspired by one of my neighbors who was telling me stories about the 120-year-old house that I live in. 3 of the cats Human couldn't see barged in front of me down the creaky old stairs. I swerved to avoid them and heard Human exclaim, "Not again, Pumpkin! I'm going to step on you!" If I could roll my eyes, I would, was my reply, which Human never comprehended. It was worse than teaching a kitten to bird. As we made it downstairs, I headed for a drink, but the bowl was empty. Again. Before I could say anything, Human was panicking about a broken flower vase. I glared at the culprits. I had to get rid of them. I knew at least one would follow me to the window, since I was never alone. Look, a bird! Go get it! She jumped out, chased the bird, and came right back inside. Through the wall this time. This wasn't working. Fellow felines, I addressed the crew, might I suggest you all take a vacation, nay, an adventure. It would be great fun. You could go right out through the wall, just like her, and perhaps you could find something you've all been looking for. I had their attention now. As I opened my mouth to tell them, Human scooped me up. Human, why? I had them in my paws, I cried. Oh, you have the cutest meows, Human exclaimed. I squirmed, jumped down, and saw them. Still gathered, but they looked sad or jealous. I hesitated. What's wrong? I asked. They looked towards Human, then back to me. Human can hold you, visible one. I'll snuggle Human for you, friends. Let's go back upstairs.
I have a little gimmick for my story. Those who want to follow along, when you see me raise my hand, close your eyes and use your imagination to follow along with my story. And when you hear me snap, open your eyes as quickly as you can, okay? Perfect. It happened again. You're laying in your bed, and all you could hear is the sound of children running around and playing in the hallway right outside your apartment door. You swear this happens almost every night. It's not always children. Sometimes it's the sound of the people upstairs having a party, cracking open a cold one. Sometimes it's someone's dog sitting outside barking at who knows what for a very, very long time. And you don't know what it is. But tonight is different. Tonight, you're gonna drag yourself out of your bed. You're gonna slowly walk towards the door, and you're gonna gaze outside that peephole, and you're gonna figure out whose damn children these are. So you get out of bed, you slowly lurch forward. You don't turn on the lights because you wanna go back to sleep. You just wanna know who these children are. And as you get closer to the door, you lean your face against the peephole, and you see it. It's almost human. It's emancipated. It's naked. The arms are slightly longer than they should be. It's crunched over, and you see it, its mouth, gaping open, large enough for you to fit your head inside of. But most importantly, the sound of children running in the hallway are coming out of its mouth. Its head snaps immediately towards you, gazing at the people. You slowly back away, hoping it didn't see you, and you take a step to the side. But you notice the shadow underneath your door growing larger and larger, and the sound of children playing in the hallway bellowing into your apartment. You stand there frozen, for it almost feels like an eternity, but eventually the shadow shrinks. The sound of children fade away into the distance, and you sit there and you ask yourself the most important question that you could possibly ask yourself: what the fuck was that? Maybe it was just a dream. Still a little sleepy. That has to be it. So you start to walk, and as you get halfway through your apartment's living room, you hear a dog barking. And instinctively, you turn towards your patio window, and there it is, completely naked, standing against the window, staring at you. It puts its hand on the window. Its mouth opens even wider. The sound of a barking dog is replaced with the sound of a cold beer opening and people laughing and having a party. And it starts to bang its hand against the window. Again. And then it goes into a seizure. It starts slamming its hands against the window, and you hear that most important noise that you've never wanted to hear in your whole life, the sound of glass cracking. And you think to yourself, is there two of them? Or is there one of them? What do I do now? But that thought's immediately interrupted as the glass shatters and this thing comes tumbling into your living room. You open the door, you slam it shut behind you, you lock the door as quickly as you can, and you hear a thud as it slams into the door, and you start to run. And now you're asking yourself a new decision: downstairs or outside? Do you think you could outrun it? Do you think you get to your car in time? No, you don't think so. So you run downstairs, and you look for the first thing, the only chance of salvation you have, a random stranger who's still awake at this time of night. You start pounding on the door, and someone opens the door. It's a large, burly man, and he is not enthusiastic about you being pounding on his door. You push yourself inside. You close the door, you slam the deadbolt shut. He looks at you and says, "Who the fuck are you?" And then immediately after that, there's a knock on the door. Police. Open up. You quickly press your hand to his lips because you don't want him to give away that someone's in the room. He is not enthused about your hand being on his lips. But you motion towards the people, and he slowly walks towards it. He puts his eye against the people, and you see all the color from his face drain. And he backs away, and you whisper in his ear, "Are there any big windows in this apartment?" He looks at you and shakes his head no. And then you whisper, "We need to hide." So he takes you to the bedroom, and you get inside a closet. You crouch down underneath clothes and stored away items, and you listen in the dark. You hear the sound of dog barking, children playing. But then you hear one very different sound, the sound of footsteps on a wooden floor as it creaks and it creaks. Lucky for you, you're no idiot. You know that all apartments are carpeted. And you wait, knowing that all it wants to do is to make eye contact with you again. Eventually morning comes, and you get out, and you look at your new best friend, and you both have a plan. And that is to break your lease, get a moving truck, and get the fuck out of Dodge. So tonight, when you're sleeping in your beds, and you hear a strange noise, take some good advice. Stay away from the windows, and for God's sake, don't make eye contact.
Sometimes the things that scare us most are real life. I am very scared I'll get in a bad car accident on the interstate, especially lately. We seem to have people changing lanes at will whenever they feel like it, without blinkers, speeding. Even coming here, there was a car that was determined to race everybody else down Blondo Street. In and out he went. And so sometimes I'm very fearful in the car on highways. A couple summers ago, I went to see my cousins in Salida, Colorado. We visited Leadville, and on our way after we left, going down the highway between Salida and Cannon City. Have you ever been on that highway? It's a crazy highway, right? Lanes going both ways, people really speeding, curving and spinning. And as I'm trying not to look at these cars just going crazy down this mountain where us from Nebraska are trying to remember where the next curve is and how big the drop off on the right is, I look ahead. Sometimes I have a game I play on my phone just so I don't have to look out the window and see these crazy drivers. My husband's over here. He's nodding his head. I'm a little fearful. We bought a new car. Now, though, it'll stop some of that. Our new car has some of the automatic driving features, and you know it automatically stops and brakes if a car stops in front of you. That is frightening if it hasn't happened to you yet. About knocks you right out of your seat. So we're going down this highway. We're chatting and talking about all the things we saw and did. When I kind of glance up and I see what looks like a large piece of paper in the highway, just as my husband hits that large piece of paper in our new Traverse. It's only about a year old at this time, and it wasn't paper. It suddenly went up underneath, tight on the car, and the car started swerving. And we had to get over to the side. And as he crawled underneath the car, he saw that it was a huge piece, and I'm not telling you a fish story, metal that has now cleaved itself to the underside of the car. As he begins to try to get some tools out to take that out, we take out the cooler, we take out the big jug of water, we take out anything else that's in the back, because now you know you have to get everything out in order to lift up the bottom to get your tools out. And he's laying under the car, and I'm standing on the side of that slope that drops off. And I'm watching him, and I see coming up the side as these cars and semis and campers are zipping by at a high rate of speed. Speed limit 65, actual speed probably 75, flying by us. I look over, and it's a 16-point buck. I don't know what it was. I don't know how to tell, but it was a big fucking buck. And his antlers are up there. And he's standing majestically, 1 foot on the side of the road and the rest back. And I look at my husband and I go, "Dear." And he looks under and he thinks, "Yes, honey." That's what he told me later, right? "Yes, honey." I go, "Dear." In my mind, I see this 10-car accident, semis on the news, rolling over each other, dead, couple from Nebraska. And I'm thinking, I can't spook him. I see a lizard come up close, like he's going to go across the road too. And I look down. If I have to roll down this hill when the cars start coming at me, there are 100 cactuses. You know those cactuses that grow in Colorado? And I'm thinking I'm going to be pierced and dead. So I get out in the bag that we have unloaded is this beautiful, filmy which is why I wore it. Filmy, little, beautiful thing that I bought from my cousin's shop called Treasures. And I think I'm just going to let it float on the wind, and I go, damn. He's still looking at me like I'm out of my mind, kind of peeking out, but he's still under the car. And I finally said, Bob! And he looks out. And about that time, he sees that deer. About the same time, that big piece of metal pops down from underneath the car. And he is starting to drag it out. And I'm going. And I'm thinking, what the hell do they think I'm doing in those cars and trucks speeding by me? They slow down a little bit because they're looking at the lady that's going. The deer, the buck looks at me. And you could see, what the hell? What is she doing? And I go. And he takes a couple steps back. I can't believe this is working. By this time, Bob is standing up, and he, I know, is now thinking the same thing I am. Big semi-trucks crashing against each other, the headlines that say, couple from Nebraska dead in Colorado highway. And he always says, don't get in the news. Not even when, he ended up upside down in one of those sewer things on the road because he was trying to fix it for a daughter-in-law, and he was upside down and he couldn't get back out. He said she couldn't go anywhere, but the buck turns and goes away. And Bob says, what were you doing? I thought you were saying deer like honey. So I carefully take that piece of metal and I lean it up against a stack of coolers and big water jugs, because nobody's ever going to believe this story, Just so you know, this really did happen. I said, maybe we should take that home so we could prove it. Husbands, your answer was, no. We got enough stuff in the car. So now I remember to save your life something really frightening. Just wave it. The end.
I'm just going to get into it. The crisp autumn air clawed its way down my throat as I breathed in deep. The smell of campfires and chainsaw fumes enveloped me. It was my favorite part of the year: pumpkin spice lattes, sweaters, and the best part of all, haunted attractions. I dragged my husband and a small group of friends to Haunted Hollow as part of my birthday celebration.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now? Cool. We'd already enjoyed the thrills and screams of the haunted house part, and now I clutched a hot cider close to my chest, the warmth seeping through the fabric of my gloves and into my fingers as we roamed the area. A small wooden shack materialized directly next to the pathway on our left. A crawling sensation creeped up my spine as my friends all dipped inside. The warmth from my cider no longer seemed to be enough to keep the cold night at bay. I didn't want to follow them in, but I wanted to stay outside, alone, even less. The interior of the shack contained all sorts of materials from the early 18th century: farm tools, household goods, clothing, anything you could think of. An unseen weight pressed against my chest. I held my breath. The air here was stale and musty. Dust motes floated around my head. A TV with some ghost hunting group played on a table. The DVD case next to it said, "Ghost Adventures, Villisca Axe Murder House." A sign posted on the wall next to the entrance stated the items in this shack had belonged to the Moore family. The weight on my chest grew heavier, and now I could barely draw in air, even if I'd wanted to. To this day, I can't explain the agony and terror that filled my entire being within that small space. As soon as one of my friends exited the shack, I followed. The air outside slammed against my cheeks. I took a few steps away and sucked in a deep breath. The weight that had wrapped me in a tight hug dissipated as the distance between myself and the shack increased. It wasn't until we were several feet away that I thought to turn to my husband and ask, "What is the Villisca Axe Murder House?" He looked at me in shock. "You don't know about Villisca? I know something about true crime that you don't?" When my only response was an eye roll, he continued, "There was a family that lived in Villisca, and they were all murdered with an axe one night. I think the case was never solved. It's pretty interesting." Several days later, when I felt enough distance from the shack and the items it contained, I did some research. The Moore family had lived in a house in Villisca, Iowa. On the morning of June 10th, 1912, Josiah and Sarah Moore, along with 4 children and 2 young guests, were found brutally murdered with an axe. An investigation yielded several suspects, but no one ever answered for the crime. There are many more details that I don't have time to share here, but if you'd like to learn more, I'd recommend reading The Man from the Train by Bill James and Rachel McCarthy James. The items I had looked at, they'd all belonged to the victims of a horrendous crime. The weight I felt sitting on my chest as I stood in the shack was the weight of a family still waiting for their justice. I haven't had an experience or feeling even similar to it since. A family that had lived and flourished just like my own, only to be stuffed out in a single night. It's a sharp reminder of our own mortality.
I'll start by saying that this is not necessarily autobiographical, but after you hear it, you'll know one of the things that terrify me in this world. It's my building, and everyone who moves in through the front door never moves out that way. The key to it all is discretion. I select my tenants carefully. People from out of town with no connections here, people who are willing to sign paper leases that I can shred, people who pay cash only. I love how they look when I finally caught them and they're sleeping in my bed. Not the bed I sleep in, but the one with sheets of satin set aside for them in my spare room. There, they rest until the sedative wears off, and I watch the gentle rise and fall of their chest, the twitch of their eyelids as they pass through various cycles of sleep. I love to graze my fingertips along their skin. The worst part is when they first wake up and struggle against the restraints. Once their eyes focus and they see me, they relax a little. They know me. It has to be a mistake. Besides, I hardly appear threatening. I try not to kill them slowly. It's really not my thing to make people suffer. But sometimes, if they don't play along, things get out of hand. The other men who have lived here were easy to lure, easy to figure out, easy to dispose of. I was getting so bored that the thrill was gone. Then the new guy. He will be my masterpiece. He thinks he's clever, unpredictable, and to the casual observer, he is. But the men who have lived here prior didn't survive my scrutiny, and I wasn't about to let him ruin things for me. So I watched. His spontaneity follows a pattern that took months to track, much longer than the others. I can't describe how much fun it was to discover that his apparently random choice of when to treat himself to pizza delivery coincided with the full moon. He has cappuccinos when it rains on Fridays. He drinks microbrews in the winter, pilsners during baseball season. Nothing is more satisfying than solving an unsolvable puzzle. My attraction to him has grown over the course of time, but I can't let sentiment stop me from my purpose. On the designated night, I put my plan into action. I'd invited him over for football and beer. He'd been here before and we'd hung out, like roommates, so he won't suspect that he won't be leaving tonight. Everything is ready. His preferred beer for a football Saturday, the dip he gave me as a gift with the rent money last week, and my mother's homemade cupcakes. The game is on and ready. I hear a knock at the door. I rise, his drink ready in my hand. He won't know what's coming. Hello. All right.
In December 2013, I was on my way home from a holiday party in Lincoln. At the party, I, of course, had so much fun. My friend Keith was hosting at his new house. It was ugly sweater themed, so, very 2013 of the time. And I was wearing a red crew neck sweater that my Grammy had decorated. Again, in that classic style, where you cut out shapes from different fabric and then you put it on the sweater and then you outlined it in the puffy paint. Classic. At the party, I found a little snowman figurine, and for some reason that I just cannot remember, I was compelled to pose this little guy all over Keith's house and take pictures of it. My friend Andrea caught on to this and helped me stage a few photos. It was very silly and very fun. And a side note, years later, I showed Keith these photos, and he was like, wow, you guys really did go everywhere in my house. We found a lot of niche places. I share all of this to highlight the mood I was in. I was feeling loved and valued, and that my purpose and, like when you're with your friends, you're just like, this is where I'm meant to be, which was a high contrast from the night before. My best friend and I met in college, and our sorority alumni group had signed up to do gift wrapping at the mall for our philanthropic project. She had insisted that we do it, and we agreed a month prior to take a Friday night shift. Then she cancels on me that same day. I'm not surprised, but disappointed. This had become a habit of hers. I go to the gift wrapping and still have fun with other friends, and I enjoy seeing what people bought for their friends and family. Later that night, I get a text, a message in a group chat with another sorority sister that I'm not very close with. Surprise, she's engaged. I'm confused because she told me she had to cancel because of a family thing. Turns out this thing was her boyfriend's friend's annual Christmas party, and yes, I had met and hung out with all of those people for years as well. I'm upset and hurt. The layers of feelings are so hard to sort through. I'm happy for her, but I don't understand why she didn't call. And I'm so hurt that it's a text message, and not even an individual text message, but a joint text with someone I haven't hung out with in years. So the next night, on the way home from my friend's holiday party, I'm driving back to Omaha. It's snowing, it's dark, my mind wanders. And this was before, your iPhone could easily connect to your car, and I don't even know what a podcast is. So I can't help, but in my brain, I'm comparing the two nights, my friendships and my feelings juxtaposed. One group of friends made me feel valued and welcomed me as I am. I was included. And I've only been close with these people for the past 2 years. And the other person I counted as my best friend of the past 5 years and have known for 7 lied to me and shared important news in a way that I felt did not honor our friendship. These thoughts led me to think about death. Yes, as a chronically and clinically depressed person, I think about death fairly frequently, and my brain can easily leap to that subject. So as I'm driving, deep in thought, considering this friendship, the past hurt it has caused me, and questioning how much I should still be committed to it, it all leads to me contemplating the unguest list for my funeral. The list you have of people you don't want out of your funeral. We all have that. The people that you just know are going to make it about their grief and not your life. All of a sudden, I realize I am quickly approaching the car in front of me. I'm in the far left lane of I-80 eastbound. And I promise you, I did not slam on the brakes. I just did a quick tap of my brakes to turn off the cruise control. However, that tap, coupled with my speed and the snowy road, caused my vehicle to spin 360 degrees across all 3 lanes of the interstate. In seconds, I was on the other side of the road, facing the correct direction, but in the shoulder. Before I could even take a breath, a semi-truck zoomed past me in the far right lane, literally right next to me. I will never forget the sound of that whoosh and my car shaking. I don't know if I screamed. I don't know if I cried. I don't know how long I sat there before continuing my drive home. And I don't know why that semi-truck missed me. I do know that that night when I did make it home and I was taking off my ugly red sweater, I saw the angel that my Grammy had placed on the left shoulder. And I know that that angel, my Grammy, protected me that night. And it's been 10 years, just over 10 years since its experience, and I am unfortunately still debating my commitment to that friendship. You could potentially just call me a scaredy cat, I guess.
As a young college student, no longer under the constant care of my parents, I reveled in my ability to do the things that I wanted. Bedtimes, diets, and study habits were all up to my own discretion, the only limits being the lack of steady income. I've always loved travel, and no longer needing my parents' say-so, my spirit of adventure came alive when my buddy Josh invited me to watch NHL hockey games around the country. But our wanderlust didn't match our travel budget. We became experts at public transportation, splitting gas money, staying at cheap hostels, using frequent flyer miles, and crashing on airport benches. But we stumbled upon the holy grail of cheap bachelor travel when we discovered couchsurfing.com. The concept was simple. You sign up to let strangers sleep for free on your couch, and in return, you are allowed to sleep for free on strangers' couches elsewhere. This was pre-Airbnb. And although the concept may sound a little strange today, in 2010 it was akin to inviting Jeffrey Dahmer, Hannibal Lecter, your mother-in-law, and that guy over for dinner. Nothing may happen, but why in the world would you not just pay the $50 a night to be assured you weren't murdered, eaten, or criticized the entire time? The idea was for no money to change hands, and couchsurfing.com was to be self-policing. You are looking for a couch, that's all. And your host is the type that will sleep for free on the couches of strangers. I hadn't heard of any gruesome murders connected to couchsurfing, but I was nervous about possible vulnerabilities. Josh had signed into couchsurfing a few months earlier, and his couch had accommodated a steady stream of drifters and hitchhikers across central Nebraska. He accepted only requests from profiles with flawless reviews and never revealed his home address. Instead, he would pick up guests at the Conestoga Mall parking lot. There may have been some awkward moments, but never any real danger. As a result, Josh's couchsurfing.com street cred was fairly substantial. But since my name was lacking from the couchsurfing.com database, it was difficult to find trusting host couches for our hockey trips. As a result, when we arrived in Raleigh, North Carolina with no place to stay, Josh was scolded for bringing a friend and creating a security concern. That night, we dipped into our meager financial reserves for a hotel room. But in Atlanta, we found a host who had no problem accepting my shaky credentials. After my first experience with Atlanta's public bus system, we were deposited into a dark neighborhood illuminated by a single orange glaring street lamp. We had an address in hand, which Josh felt was a little strange. This wasn't the way he handled things when he hosted couch surfers. We followed our smartphone's directions and located a dimly lit, worn-out house. Josh gave me the basic overview of how a typical such interaction works. There is a greeting, followed by some general conversation about who you are and what you're up to, and any philosophical ramblings that seem appropriate for the audience. Then the host leaves for the rest of the night with the general understanding that you will fall asleep on the couch. That's it. Nothing crazy is supposed to happen. Shouldn't happen. Hopefully isn't going to happen. We knocked on the door, and it slowly opened. Our host met us, gave us the lay of the land, and alluded to his minimalist sensibilities. He spoke slowly and deliberately, carefully calculating each word. He said he had a roommate who was gone. He had never hosted before, but had used the service extensively in his own travels. He was excited to host. He said he had always wanted to host. He didn't seem to know a lot about the house, which he blamed on the absent roommate. All the furnishings seemed foreign to him. He said they were owned by the roommate who wasn't there, the roommate whose presence was as empty as my couchsurfing.com profile. The wooden floorboards creaked with each step as we were escorted to where we would be spending the night. Our host asked if we needed anything. Josh said he was fine, but I asked for a blanket. He was happy to oblige. He fetched a folded, worn-out comforter and put it at the foot of my couch. Bidding us goodnight, he said if we needed anything, his bedroom is just upstairs, and he slowly retreated. He said he wouldn't be far. He's close by. I unfolded the blanket, laid down, and covered up, drawing the hem under my chin. True, the comforter is kind of dingy, I thought to myself, but it'll keep me warm. But after fluffing the blanket while getting settled, I became aware of a faint, unpleasant scent of decay or mildew or something. Josh, do you smell that? What? I fluffed my blanket again, pushing up a fresh puff of tainted air toward him. Do you smell that? No. Over the next few puffs blown his way, he repeatedly denied the stench's existence. Something smells like dog shit, like actual poop from a dog. You don't smell that? Josh remained adamant in his denial. Now, I am not an overly pretentious man, and encountering pet feces, dog or cat or any other mammal usually wouldn't bother me. But damn it, it's a different story when you're trying to fall asleep on the couch of a complete stranger. I tried to force the shit smell out of my mind. I wouldn't be able to fall asleep if I dwelled too long on where it came from, or what it came from, or who it came from. I gave up trying to solve the mystery. Something told me I would need my energy, and I tried to go to sleep. A few hours later, Josh and I woke up around the same time. We began talking through our day's plans. Josh left the room and I began collecting my things and making my bed. I decided to refold the lone blanket as neatly as I found it. I didn't want to upset anyone. Then, the odor mystery was solved. As I was shaking the blanket, a poop nugget indelicately fell out, bouncing down my front and landing square on my bare foot. Let me repeat that last part. Dog shit from the blanket I had slept in fell on my foot. I panicked and danced around, shaking the blanket in search for more turds. Thankfully, that was the only one I could find. As I was collecting my wits, I heard our host coming downstairs. This was going to be awkward. My first thoughts were to confront him, but something told me that wouldn't do much good. I mean, how would that conversation have gone? Dude, there was dog shit in the blanket you gave me. Yeah, I know. I just wanted to keep this man at a distance and get out of there, and I decided Josh could be sacrificed. Josh was standing in the kitchen waiting for his oatmeal to absorb the appropriate amount of moisture. I knew his extreme extroversion would mandate that he made small talk with our host, and once the morning greetings commenced, I leapt into action. First, I needed to dispose of the evidence, which I grabbed in a paper towel and threw in the trash, smearing it on the carpet in the process, because yes, it was still moist. Next, I washed my turd-tainted barefoot in the bathroom sink while my whole body was shaking as if a centipede was crawling down my spine. I took a moment while locked in the bathroom to compose myself. I put on a brave face, unlocked the door, walked into the kitchen, and greeted everyone. By then, I was cool as a cucumber, or some other vegetable that isn't covered in shit. Our host offered us a ride to the airport, and Josh, oblivious to this man's propensity to put fecal matter in the things that he shared, quickly accepted. On the ride, Josh and I made small talk, or no talk, or I can't really remember, but the entire time, all I could think was he has no idea that I slept in dog shit last night. As soon as we were safely standing on the curb of the airport with luggage in tow and our driver back on the interstate, I blurted out, "Dude, there was dog poop in my blanket last night." I had to repeat this a few more times before he kind of fully understood. That smell last night, it was dog shit, like from a dog, and I slept in it. I walked him through my morning, and we took a moment to pause and fully appreciate what had just transpired. Then we caught our flight. I repeated the story to everyone, except my parents. It became my go-to, my icebreaker, my attention grabber, my keep in the back pocket tale. But even after all these retellings, one day, something about the events of that morning struck me and shook me to my core. The entire time we were in the Atlanta house, I never once saw a dog or any other sign of a dog. It didn't come from me, honest. You've got to believe me.
The look on Vince's face was priceless. He was an easy mark for our little group of friends, and we scared the shit out of him. Fucking glorious. Adam Adam and I got him good that time in the dorm room when I was in college in the early 2000s. Vince was terrified of clowns, and we rigged up a little surprise for him when he got back to his dorm room after his morning classes. We heard his footsteps. It was hard to miss those big moose stumping down the hallway to the room, and Adam and I got into place. The door opened, the rig jumped up, equipped with a killer clowns from outer space mask on it. Vince screamed like a little girl at a Taylor Swift concert. Adam snapped a Polaroid with perfect precision of a professional photographer to capture Vince's red-faced scream. Once Vince caught his breath, he screamed, "You motherfuckers, I'm gonna get you for this." The big moose proceeded to chase us around the small dorm and pummel us into oblivion. We were all laughing by the end of the beating, and Vince, ever the good sport, even let us post a picture in the hallway bulletin board. You know, social media before social media. A few months later, Vince, Adam, and Pat, the other friend of our group, and I were cruising, as you do when you're bored and live in Omaha, and trying to think of something to do. "Hey," Pat said with a shit-eating grin, "you guys ever been to Hummel Park?" And I said, "I used to go to day camp when I was a kid." "Yeah, but have you gone at night?" "Fuck no," Adam said. "The albinos will get you." We laughed at the old urban legend. "Chicken shit," Pat said. "I ain't going there," Vince said. Then there was already panic in his voice. I was driving my old beat-up hoopty college car that was held together by duct tape and a prayer, and I made the executive decision, "Oh, we're fucking going." Vince was nearly pissing himself and making my rusty POS car vibrate with his shaking. I couldn't pass up this opportunity to fuck with him. We arrived at Hummel Park just after sundown. "Pull over here," Pat said, pointing to the small trail. I parked us to where he pointed. The area he had taken us was called the Devil's Slide because of the natural treacherous cliff. "Come on," Pat said, called as he climbed out of the car. "Let's climb down the slide." No, Vince said, shaking his head and walking up to Pat. Let's just go. "You wuss, we just got here. Come on, let's climb down. I'd rather be alive in a wuss than dead at the bottom of that hill." Pat grabbed Vince by the shoulders. "Come on," he yelled. He started pushing him towards the edge. "You're scared of everything." Adam and I looked at each other. Our eyes were wide. Pat had never actually been this aggressive before. "Stop," Vince yelled as Pat continued to push him to the edge of the Devil's Slide. "No," Pat said, and he was getting more hostile with each push. "Pat!" Adam yelled at him. They reached the cliff's edge. Vince was in tears, teetering on the edge. I heard some loose gravel fall to the bottom. "Come on, you pansy, you scaredy cat." Theme of the night. Pat yelled in a fever pitch. "Pat!" Both Adam and I yelled in unison and started moving towards them. "That's enough," I yelled. Pat glanced back at me with the look I've never seen on his face, and one of my best friends since grade school. It scared me. He looked back at the blubbering Vince, whose eyes were two big white saucers of fright, and he pushed him over the cliff. My stomach dropped. Vince fell back in slow motion. "No!" I heard Adam yell, but we were already in motion to the cliff's edge. It felt like an eternity until we reached the side, and we looked over. Confusion hit my brain. Instead of seeing my friend's body smashed on the rocks below, we looked up. He was looking up at us from an outcropping. There was a camera pointed at my face. I was blinded by the flash. Laughter followed up from behind us and came up. Tears of laughter were streaming down Vince's face as he called up from his perch. "Gotcha, assholes."